Hi students, in this session we are going to discuss a lesson, the last lesson, which was written by Alphonse Daudet. Now let's know something about the author. Alphonse Daudet was a French novelist, short story writer, playwright and a poet. He was born in 1840 in France and died in 1897. He was formerly a school teacher and he quit it to make a living as a journalist in Paris. He took to writing his poems collected into a volume called Les Amalureuses. This French story writer and novelist is now remembered chiefly as the author of sentimental tales of provincial life in the south of France. Now, I would like to draw a sketch in your mind about this lesson. Linguistic chauvinism is the idea that one language is superior to that of others. This happens generally when the language is that of the ruling class. Linguistic chauvinism refers to the imposition of one language on others. Language is considered to be the cultural identity of the people who use it. The language is the pride of our country as it defines the cultural history. The best lesson revolves around the language and its importance to the citizens of a country. It is the duty of every citizen to safeguard the language of the country as it is the identity of that country. This lesson is set against the backdrop of the Franco-Prussian War of 1870-71, which saw the defeat of France at the hands of Prussia. Now, the countries like Germany, Poland and parts of Austria come under Prussia. This lesson depicts how after defeating France in the war, the Prussians wanted to rule over not only the territory of France, but also over the minds and hearts of the people. The last lesson explores the effects of cultural subjugation in a time of war. Now, let us have a quick look on the characters of this lesson. Franz. He is the narrator and protagonist of the story. He is a young schoolboy in the French region of Alsace-Lorraine in the 19th century. Franz is a dawdler when it comes to school work. He prefers to spend time in the woods or by the local river over going to school. He doesn't like learning his French grammar lessons, and when the story begins, he is terrified that his negligence will be found out by his teacher. The next character is M. Hamel. He is the schoolmaster of a small village school in the French region of Alsace-Lorraine. He is stern and intimidating to his pupils, and among them is the narrator of the story, Franz. He has been teaching at the school for 40 years. In his classroom, he always carries a ruler which he raps against the table threateningly. Despite his frightening demeanor, Hamel also has a gentle side which he reveals one day in this lesson. The other characters are the villagers. The first one is Hauser. He is one of the elder villager who gathers with the children in Hamel's classroom to hear the last lesson. He brings his old primer and elementary reading textbook with him to the class and uses it to help the younger students read this letter. And the second one is the blacksmith, Wachter. He is a blacksmith in the village. He plays a very minor role in this lesson. And the other minor roles are the retired mayor and the former postmaster. Now students, Let's start off with the lesson. I started for school very late that morning and was in great dread of a scolding, especially because M. Hamill had said that he would question us on participles and I did not know the first word about them. Now here, in great dread of means fear of something. Okay. So the lesson starts, as I told you, the narrator of the story is a young school-going boy named Franz. And that morning, he was scared, not only for the reason that he was late to school, but also because his teacher M. Hamill had announced the previous day that he would test them on the topic participles. And Franz actually did not know anything at all. He was really very scared of being scolded. For a moment, I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. It was so warm, so bright. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, and in the open field back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers were drilling. So here sawmill means a factory. We all know it's a factory for cutting wood, and drilling is exercising here. So what happens is, on one hand, Franz was scared of being scolded by his teacher Hamill, and on the other hand, there was another option which was buzzing around in his mind. That is, to miss the school and enjoy the day out in the warm and bright weather. And he started describing the scene, like as if there were birds chirping on the trees and the noise of the Prussian soldiers, doing the drill behind the sawmill could also be heard. So he was type of picturizing everything in his mind, and he wanted to bunk the school and class and go and enjoy this surrounding. It was all much more tempting than the rule for participles, but I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. So tempting means attracting, and resist is to stay away. So what happened is the scene outside the school was much more attractive than the school for Franz. But Franz felt that he could control his temptation. He had the strength to control his temptations, and he chose to go to school. So what he said is he chose to go and attend the school, and he felt that he had the strength to control his temptations. When I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in front of the bulletin board. For the last 2 years, all our bad news had come from there. The lost battles, the draft, the orders of the commanding officer, and I thought to myself without stopping, what can be the matter now? So bulletin board is a notice board which is put up in the villages for the viewing the latest news and communication. So what happened is, as Franz walked past the town hall, he noticed a huge crowd at the notice board. That is, he was walking towards the school. So there he noticed a huge crowd at the notice board, and the war with Prussia had begun 2.5 years ago. And since then, all the news like losing the war, occupation of Alsace-Lorraine by the enemy, that is Prussia, had been communicated to the people through this bulletin board. And but Franz kept on walking towards the school and thought in his mind, what news? Because he had no time to stop there. Already he was late to school, so he had no time to stop there and view the bulletin board. So he kept on walking towards the school and thought, what could be the news put up at the board now? There's a crowd being surrounded around the bulletin board. Then, as I hurried by as fast as I could go, the blacksmith watcher, who was there with his apprentice reading the bulletin, called after me, "Don't go so fast, bub. You'll get to your school in plenty of time." I thought he was making fun of me and reached M. Hamel's little garden all out of breath. So here, apprentice is a trainee and bub is an informal way of calling a cute boy or a little boy. Okay, so what happened is, as he walked hurriedly to France to go to school, on the way he saw a blacksmith named Watcher who had come to that place to read the bulletin news, what was written, put on the bulletin board with his trainee. So Franz from behind, he called Franz from behind and said that he needn't go in such a hurry as there was plenty of time for him to reach school. So when he said suddenly, why did he say so? That was, Franz was actually thinking that the blacksmith was making fun of him as he was already late for school. He was sarcastically telling this way. But actually the blacksmith told Franz not to go so fast because he knew that he was going to have his last lesson of French, as it was Hamel's last day also. So he will not scold him. So because he know the news which was put on the bulletin board, and that is the France being overtaken by Prussia, and that is why this was the last lesson of Hamel teaching French. So that is the reason he told Franz not to run so fast. And when Franz was just thinking, why was this blacksmith saying so? That he thought that he was making fun of him. And thinking so, he just reached a garden outside the school. And he was out of breath as he walked very fast. He was panting. Usually, when school began, there was a great bustle which could be heard out in the street. The opening and closing of desks, lessons repeated in unison, very loud with our hands over our ears to understand better, and the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. So, here a great bustle means a lot of noise created by many people, and unison is at the same time. And rapping here is striking. As he was rapping on the table, is striking the table. So here Franz describes the usual scenario in the morning at the school. That is, the morning begins with the moving of the desks caused by the students to get into their places. So everyone just moved the desks here and there to get into their places. And then the children repeating the lessons loudly in chorus. And the teacher striking the tables with the rulers could also be heard. So this was the usual scenario outside the school which could be heard and which happens. Okay. But now it was all so still. I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen. But of course that day everything had to be as quiet as Sunday morning. So here counted is actually depended upon, and commotion we all know is confusion, full of noise. So that day everything seemed very different and sounded as quiet as though it was Sunday morning. That is, no such sound was coming out of the school. The moving of desk or the teacher striking the table or the children reading the lessons in chorus, nothing could be heard as it used to be on other days. So it was very quiet as though it was Sunday morning. The school opened on Sunday. How would be the school on Sunday? So Franz had planned. Actually, what did he plan is it will be full of it will be noisy, and he could hide himself under this commotion and reach the class without being noticed by anyone. But that cannot be done now. So that seems not possible. That is not possible now because it is absolute silence, and that day he could not succeed what he had planned. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places and M. Hamel walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler under his arm. So what happened is, as he was late to school and it was completely silent, so what did Franz do? He peeped inside the classroom and saw his classmates were all seated. And M. Hamel, their the teacher, walking in the classroom with the ruler made of iron placed under his arm. So Franz feared that he would get beatings from him. So he was very much scared. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. You can imagine how I blushed and how frightened I was. Blushed is turn red due to shame. So that is called blushed. And actually what happened here is, to enter the classroom, Franz had to open the door. So that day Franz really felt ashamed of being late and was fearful that he would be scolded by Hamel in front of everyone as soon as he enters the classroom. But nothing happened. M. Hamel saw me and said very kindly, "Go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you." So it was quite opposite of what he expected. So to his surprise, nothing happened that day. And Hamel saw Franz and told him very politely to get back to his place and go and get seated quickly. And he said that class was about to begin without him. So he said he was quite surprised because there was a change everywhere. First of all, the school was very quiet and not as he expected, and he expected Hamel to scold him, but on the contrary, he was very polite and asked him to get back to his place. I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt and a little black silk cap, all embroidered, that he never wore except on inspection and prize days. So, as soon as he heard Hamel saying, he hurried to his place. And after some time, when he overcame the scare and became comfortable, because he came fast, he was panting, and then he was fearful, so he was disturbed. So after he became comfortable, he noticed that the teacher had worn a beautiful green coat with frilled shirt and black silk cap that day. And normally the teacher would wear it on occasions like inspection, school inspection, and on prize distribution days. So Franz wondered, why is the teacher wearing the day seems to be very normal, and what would be the reason for Hamel to wear his special dress today? Besides, the whole school seemed so strange and solemn. But the thing that surprised me most was to see on the back benches that were always empty, the village people sitting quietly like ourselves. Old Hauser with his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several others besides. So what happened is, Franz felt that the atmosphere in the school was unusual and was very serious. There was no sound at all, perfect silence, everything seemed to be contrary of the opposite of what he expected and thought of. So added to all this, what he observed was that the last benches of the classrooms were occupied by senior village men like Hauser, who was wearing his three-cornered hat. It's a type of hat. And then the retired mayor was sitting there, and then the postmaster. So all this seemed very strange for Franz. So everything seemed to be a sign of confusion to Franz, and he was confused and could not figure out what was happening and what was going to happen. So let's discuss about all this in our next session. Thank you, students.